Okay, hi everybody, welcome back to another video. So as you would have seen from the title and thumbnail, this video is going to be about me reading my most anticipated releases in terms of sequels. I already have 2 books that came out and I'm intrigued to read. That's the idea for this video, and I've actually already started and I'm already halfway through my first book, and it is actually Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. Just a slight disclaimer, if you notice anything wrong with my eye, just ignore it. I don't really think you can tell, but yeah, it's just in case. I don't know what happened to it also. So Love on the Brain is actually not a sequel. Okay, maybe for this video it might just be my anticipated releases, but it's kind of along the lines of a companion novel, I think, or it might not be. I really honestly can't remember whether the characters in Love on the Brain were featured in The Love Hypothesis, but yeah, anyway, it's by Ali Hazelwood, who has written The Love Hypothesis, which is my first romance novel that I've given 5 stars to, and it's automatically become my favorite romance novel so far. Love on the Brain was recently published after waiting for so long, so yeah, I'm actually more than halfway through it. So okay, let's talk about what Love on the Brain is first. It's essentially enemies to lovers in the same kind of STEM academia setting, but this time it's in NASA. The main female character is B. She lives by a simple code. What would Marie Curie do? She takes on the task of being the head neuroscientist in this project. It's like a collaboration between her organization and NASA. NASA's co-lead representative is Levi Ward. He is the co-lead that is NASA's representative. It's kind of like, oh no, because they kind of have been avoiding, they haven't had a pleasant interaction with each other for the 7 years that they've known each other. So everybody views them as arch enemies, even though they themselves, B doesn't really know why this happened also. The start of this was kind of rocky because B was like, I have to work with him, so that's where the enemies part kind of comes in. But along the way, they kind of clear up some things, they start to become more friendly with each other, and oh my gosh, okay, so the thoughts, right? I was honestly worried that this was going to be not very good, because when I first read it, I had a lot of comments about how, this might be spoilers, let me put spoiler warning, about how they are not technically enemies to lovers, and it actually gave me kind of like Spanish love deception vibes, which I've read in the Goodreads video, because it was very clear to me from the start that B is just misunderstanding the situation. But what's better about Love on the Brain compared to Spanish Love Deception is that in Spanish Love Deception, the one-sided thing was very clear, and it's just the female main character who doesn't know what's happening. But in Love on the Brain, everybody believes that they hate each other, Levi hates B, that kind of thing. So she's not one-sided in this. But from all the interactions, it was very clear to me that it's more of like a lack of interaction, kind of miscommunication that led to this kind of false belief that Levi hates B, but actually it's not the case. And I guess because it's a romance novel, that essentially he's just too in love with her, he's trying to avoid her and things like that. But it got better as the book went along because of how the writing is still good. I can still feel the chemistry between the 2 main characters, and as always, I love how we are in this academic setting, just that now we are in a different setting, in the sense that now we're talking about space, astronauts, and the product that they are collaborating to work on this project together is really, really scientific and all those kinds of things, and we kind of get to know how neuroscientists work as well. Same thing with all of Ali Hazelwood's books. The science part is very legitimate and it's very interesting to read about, which I love also. But what's annoying is that the same issue is still there about how Levi is a mountain and she is a midget. That same thing is still there. And also what I felt that the book did well was how there were elements that I wasn't expecting, similar to The Love Hypothesis. Essentially, B is, I'm not sure if this is spoilers, it's not in the synopsis, so I assume it can be spoilers, but it's really, really minor. I'll put a spoiler warning anyway. Essentially, she was engaged, so she has an ex-fiance, and some of the things that were happening, I kind of was like, what the hell, like, even if you're enemies, you can't do this kind of thing. But actually turns out it was all a misunderstanding. So Levi is really, really not an asshole, and it is just how the ex-fiance is an asshole essentially, and he is doing all these things like gaslighting B and manipulating Levi. So he's just like in their way, but he's also the cheating asshole. He went after B's best friend, who fell into the temptation. So that was kind of how she had to essentially kill her career, because the three of them were all heading to this facility together to further their career and things like that. But B broke off from that. And oh my god, I keep feeling the angst in this about how Levi, he just loves her so much. Oh, I don't even know if I prefer Levi or Adam from The Love Hypothesis, because Levi, he just loves her unconditionally. He didn't even realize that what he was doing was contributing to this belief of how he detests B. He didn't even realize it, which I found a bit unrealistic, but maybe he's too much in his own head. He's just always there for her. They weirdly enough have the same interest in a lot of things, like how they both like cats, they're both vegans, they like the same kind of music. It's almost to a point where I can't tell whether this is realistic or not, because to find somebody who is so similar to you on all these levels is a bit. And he just pays attention to everything that she says. Also, there is this element of B runs this account called What Would Marie Do, and it's a space to empower women of STEM and for them to come together and provide solutions for each other, because they clearly have a much harder time in this industry than men, because it's such a overly densely populated men career. They have to face misogyny, sexism most of the time while they're working, and it's like a space for them to provide solutions and support for each other. And she is also friends on Twitter with this other academia Twitter account, which I believe is going to be Levi, based on details of how he was sharing about his problems with this girl. It's gonna be him. So that might be the potential third act conflict. Whenever I read romance books, I'm trying to think of what the third act conflict can be. I really thought that I wouldn't enjoy this a lot, so I was kind of really scared that I was going to be disappointed, but I actually am. Oh, I'm jumping all over the place, but okay, let's go back to the enemies to lovers discussion. So when I was reading that, right, I got a bit annoyed because it gave me the Spanish love deception vibes. So I kind of searched on Google, like, isn't enemies to lovers just miscommunication? Because they believe that they're enemies because of some misunderstanding, mostly because of them not communicating to each other. And I found this very relevant blog post about how the author is discussing the lack of communication in enemies to lovers books also, which is the problem that I did not like. So for a moment I was like, oh my god, I don't like enemies to lovers. It might be because of this kind of trope, the lack of communication. If you know me, I don't really like miscommunication in general. But yeah, so I was thinking I was gonna have a hard time reading this, but actually no, like after the book progressed, like more things were added on. It's not just purely about this enemies to lovers thing, and B does have reasons for believing why Levi would hate her also. I'm starting to enjoy it more, to the extent that I don't know whether I will give it like a very, very high rating, like the Love Hypothesis kind. As I mentioned before, I really still do not know whether I prefer Levi or Adam, but I can really feel the chemistry between the two characters, and Levi is just so sweet. Oh, also B has a tendency to faint. Like Levi is always there to catch her. I'm scared to finish this because then I will have nothing to be happy about. Okay, no, I still have more anticipated releases. It's just that, oh my god, if I finish this, then it's like, I think I'll feel a void inside of me. I will probably finish this quite soon because my audiobook loan is due tomorrow. So yeah, I'll just come back with more thoughts. Sorry that all my thoughts are all over the place. I'm just listing them out as I think about them. Also, just know that I am enjoying my time now, and it just makes me so happy because it's really sad to have your anticipated read to become a disappointment. So I'm glad that it has not reached that level. It was kind of like dipping and then it went up. Please enjoy the rest of the video. Hi! So actually, hours after the update, I managed to finish Love on the Brain. Trigger warnings for sexism, misogyny, gun violence, death of parent, toxic relationship, panic attacks, seizure disorder in children, mentions of workplace sexual harassment. In the end, I decided to give it 4.5 stars, which means that I preferred the Love Hypothesis over Love on the Brain, but I feel like the tension between the two characters in both The Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain is really much there, just that I deducted 0.5 from Love on the Brain because of the miscommunication thing at the start. My whole discussion basically in the previous clip about how is enemies to lovers really just a lack of communication or miscommunication. Also, the last scene at the end of Love on the Brain is kind of spoilers, so I'm just gonna put a spoiler warning. As mentioned in the trigger warnings, there's gun violence because we finally found out who did it, and it wasn't the person that I was expecting, which I'm very sad about. I was kind of like thinking about whether or not it could be him, but in the end I was like, oh nah, it can't be, he's too nice already. But it turned out to be him, so it became a bit ridiculous because suddenly there was this whole scene about him having a gun and trying not to get shot and things like that, which I didn't really want to see in this kind of fluffy books, you know, for romance. It felt a bit out of place and a bit ridiculous, which was why overall I deducted 0.5, but apart from that, it was still very, very cute. I'm glad that my anticipated release didn't turn out to be a disappointment as I originally thought it would be when I first read the first part of this book. So yeah, very, very happy. My next book for this video is probably going to be Venom Dark and Sweet, because I read, you can see over here, I read A Magic Steeped in Poison and I gave it 5 stars if you have seen from my previous video where I read the book, hoping that one will be equally good or even better than Love on the Brain as well as A Magic Steeped in Poison. So yeah, I'll update you when I eventually get around to reading it. I realized that I wanted to read out to you the quotes that I enjoyed from Love on the Brain, so pardon this interruption. This is from chapter 19 about Penny, who is the cutest voice on the audiobook. So this might be spoilers also, let me just put spoilers. Basically, B has a habit of fainting when she sees things that she is scared of, like snakes or spiders, and she actually fainted and she woke up. But basically she fainted because she saw Penny spider soft toy, and then she was asking, so if I show you Shaggy again, Shaggy meaning the spider, the soft toy spider. Levi and Lily yell no at the same time, but it's too late. Penny whips the toy back out from behind her back and everything goes dark again. This child, oh my gosh. So that was the first one. And then this from chapter 23. Levi says there hasn't been anyone else. His jaw tenses and works. Since the first moment I saw you, since the first moment I talked to you and made an ass of myself, there hasn't been anyone else. Last one, chapter 25. So prior to this scene, they were actually betting on something and B wanted a mug if she won that says something like best neuroscientist, because Levi has a mug, something similar. So in chapter 25, Levi gives her a mug and she was like, oh my god, you're Yoda best neuroscientist, you had it made. And I was just like, so cute. And okay, despite the Star Wars reference again, I have never watched Star Wars, have no interest in watching, but I still found that really cute. So yeah, that's the end of my short intervention, and on to the next clip. My god, what even? I also think the camera is slanted, but it's okay, we will make do. So I actually haven't updated this vlog in many weeks, might be months, but I just wanted to come and update because I finally started reading another one of my anticipated releases of 2022, which is Before Your Memory Fades by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this is basically the third book that has been translated into English by the translator, which is Geoffrey Chaucelot. If you haven't watched the vlogs where I've read the previous two books, which are Before the Coffee Gets Cold and Tales from the Cafe, I'll link it up above for you. But basically, it's following the same concept, which is about this cafe. There's this special seat in the cafe where customers can sit on to travel to a different point in time. It can be in the past, it can be in the future. Each book follows a different group of characters, but the original cast of characters still appear. So for example, in this book, Before Your Memory Fades, the characters that still appear from the previous books are Kazu, Nagare. To avoid spoilers, that's all I'll say for now. Even though the concept is the same, each customer's story is different, which is why I really enjoy this series so much. I enjoyed Tales from the Cafe even more than Before the Coffee Gets Cold, so I'm hoping that I'll enjoy Before Your Memory Fades even more than Tales from the Cafe, but I don't know, so we shall see. So actually in the third book, we are not in the cafe Funiculi Funicula, I think that's how the audiobook says it, but in this cafe, it is actually run by Nagare's mom, Yukari Tokita. So she's the owner of this cafe, also known as Dona Dona. Nagare and Kazu are here to help run the cafe for a while because the owner, Yukari, is away in America helping a boy find his father. So as always, there is this relationship map of the characters at the start of the book. So far, I have finished the first chapter, which is the daughter, and I have moved on to the second chapter, which is the comedian. So how this book is structured is the same as that of the first two books, which is, I believe there are only 4 chapters per book, but each chapter is about a certain customer that is going to travel to a different point in time. Because of that, the chapters are kind of long because we just follow closely on this character's story, on why they want to go to a different point in time, what happens when they go to that different point in time, interacting with whoever they want to meet, and so on and so forth. So the rules are the same. Oh my gosh, I don't think I talked about the movie, which I put in the Cozy Reads video. So okay, let me put like a few clips now of me watching it and crying. The movie was called Cafe Funiculi Funicula. It follows the first book, Before the Coffee Gets Cold, the characters. There are some differences between the book and the movie, but not to the point where it's like completely deviating from the book, and not to the point where I would say that they are like totally different. So one thing that I picked up and still remember is that in the book, one of the rules are that you cannot leave from that seat once you travel to that point in time. The moment you get up, you'll be transported back to the present time. But in the movie, the people could get up and move to different seats, which I don't know why they decided to do these kind of small changes. I guess maybe to try and make it slightly different from the story so that those who read the book before would still appreciate the movie. But I was still very much touched by the characters and the storyline. The details of the first book are kind of fuzzy in my brain, but the main details are there, and I really enjoyed it still. So I would recommend you to watch it if you want to have like a heartwarming good time but also cry and get touched by the characters. So far, the first story didn't really make me emotional, but I don't know, maybe the other chapters might, and I shall update you when I do so. So that's all I'm gonna say for this book so far. I also wanted to update that I have started my reread of A Magic Steeped in Poison. This is the hardcover. The last jacket is like somewhere on my shelf. So I'm only at page 32 and I'm trying to slowly start annotating it as well. Can you see I have like 3 tabs at the moment? So this one is for the glossary, and these 2 are just parts that I wanted to tab, and I'll talk more about it as I progress further into the book, I guess. I also realized that my copy is kind of torn in the middle. Like, you can see that there's a hole here, right? Yeah, and then when I flip to that page, I can kind of see that there are hairs at the bottom along the seam of the book. Is that what it's called? Yeah, I can kind of see it. A bit sad about that, but I hope the book doesn't break on me. I literally got this very recently. I'm using the same bookmark as I did when I read this for the first time. It's a crane, and then the other end is a cloud. which I think fits the book super well. We follow Ning, who has traveled to the kingdom, the palace, to participate in this competition for Shen Nong tools across the whole country to find the greatest Shen Nong Shi, which are the masters of the ancient and magical art of tea making. She is a Shen Nong Tu, which means a disciple rather than a master. She traveled to this competition to win this competition essentially and become the Shen Nong Shi because the winner gets a favor granted by the princess. She wants that favor because her mother was poisoned to death by a tea brick, which was being distributed across the country by the shadow, I think. Her sister also ingested the tea. Luckily, her mother brewed something to force the sister to vomit everything out, but the effects of the tea are still lingering in her body, and so she has fallen sick. Although the sister Shu was supposed to be the disciple, Ning took her place because I don't think she was named as her mother is a Shen Nong Shi. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I don't think Shu was named as her mother's disciple yet, and so Ning takes the opportunity to take the scroll and impersonate herself as her mother's disciple to participate in the competition. She also has knowledge of tea making and everything because she learned it from her mother, but it was supposed to be her sister to be the official disciple because her father, who is a physician, needed strong hands to help, and so Ning was that person. I'm like super at the start of the book, but she has reached the palace. The first competition has just begun. It's fun to reread and revisit this story before I read A Venom Dark and Sweet, but I'm kind of scared because everybody who I've seen making reviews for that book has said that it was kind of a letdown, so I'm kind of scared to get into it, but we shall see, and I'll update you when I have more updates. Hi! It has been quite a while since I finished Before Your Memory Fades. I just happened to have time today. Actually, I'm kind of avoiding writing my essay, so I decided to attempt to be productive and come and tell you about my review for Before Your Memory Fades. As always, we'll start with trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for death, suicidal thoughts, death of parents, and grief. In the end, I gave Before Your Memory Fades 3 stars, and it's kind of sad because I think I mentioned that I gave Before Your Coffee Gets Cold 4.25 stars, and then I gave Tales from the Cafe 4.5 stars, which means that out of all the books that have been released in this series so far, I didn't enjoy the latest one the most. I thought it was just okay compared to the first 2 books. I'm not sure if it's fatigue because it might have been that after 2 books of this similar theme, the same formula, I'm starting to get a bit tired. The characters kind of feel similar to the characters in the first 2 books, wherein we are going through the same themes of like grief and regret and so on and so forth. So it might be that, and maybe I just feel like they're not distinct enough for me to appreciate Before Your Memory Fades more. I also do not know why Before Your Memory Fades, the title is as such, because I don't think any of the characters were dealing with any condition wherein their memory will fade, so I do not know why. So if you have any idea, please let me know in the comments down below because I really want to know why. Same as Home Before Dark, I don't know why the title is as such. As I mentioned before, in this book we are following the characters in Cafe Dona Dona. I felt like I wanted to know more about the story of a few more characters in the cafe. So for example, this might be spoilers, mild spoilers for the first and second book about certain characters, so if you don't want to know anything about that, you can just skip ahead. In the first and second book, we're in Cafe Funicula, there is this character, this lady who sits in the seat that will allow customers to travel to a different point in time. That lady actually has a story as well as to why she is sitting there. If I remember correctly, if you don't drink your coffee in time before the coffee gets cold, you will become a ghost and have to sit in that chair. So in the Cafe Dona Dona, we also have a character sitting in the seat, but this time instead of a lady, a gentleman, I think, who is wearing kind of like retro-ish clothes. So maybe the person was from quite long ago, then he was dressed in such a manner, then he didn't drink the coffee in time. I don't know the story, which I felt like it would have been a good opportunity to learn more about that person's story as well. But because I know that this is an ongoing series, I'm not sure if maybe the characters that I wanted to see more of from the third book will be covered in the fourth book. So we shall see. But overall, I just didn't really enjoy this as much as Before the Coffee Gets Cold and Tales from the Cafe, which is kind of sad because it was an anticipated release, right? But I guess we shall hope for book 4 that it will be better. According to this video, I should be starting on A Venom Dark and Sweet. I think I told you that I started my reread of A Magic Steeped in Poison, so these are my tabs so far. On my reread, I'm realizing that I kind of forgot a lot of things that happened. I'm amazed at how fast my memory can forget things actually. Because there'll be things where I feel like I'm reading them for the first time, but I definitely have not, because I actually have a video of myself reading it. If you have watched the video before, if not, I'll link it up above for you. But I'm also not exactly feeling the 5-star vibes from this anymore, but I don't think I'm gonna change my rating, because to me it's like there are certain books where the first time you read it is 5 stars, and on a reread you may not feel like that anymore, but that shouldn't mean that the book doesn't deserve 5 stars, because to me it's like the first time you experience the book is what's important. But at the same time, if I reread a book and I enjoy it better, I feel like I might increase the rating. I don't know, man. Ratings are hard, ratings are subjective, but I am definitely quite intrigued. I kind of remember what happens, but I can't remember everything, so we shall see. I'm currently at page 214 out of 364, so about more than halfway. So I'm trying to finish this soon, and hopefully the second half will help me regain that 5-star feeling again. But even if not, I don't think I'll change my rating, because I remember really enjoying it when I first read it. And of course, the descriptions of the food in here, even on a reread, are still so good, and I'm really recognizing how good Judy Lynn's writing is. There are all these blue tabs. Basically, when I feel like the writing is really beautiful, like sentences that I really like, I tap them in the blue color, and there's like quite a lot. I guess I'll update you more when I finish this and when I start A Venom Dark and Sweet. So for now, that's all from me. Hi, so I finished A Magic Steeped in Poison. Look at the beautiful cover, and here are my tabs in total, my thoughts after finishing this as a reread. I feel like I'm not going to change my rating, and if I were to be exact, I gave it 4.75 stars the previous time. I'm not going to change my rating because I feel like there are certain books where for the first time you read it may be 5 stars, but on the second time it may not be as good because certain elements of this book were meant as a surprise. So once you know about it, it's kind of hard to go into this book and enjoy it equally as the first time you read it. So for example, like mysteries or thrillers, once you know the twist, it's hard to reread them because you already know the plot twist at the end. That's how I feel about this book. And I think on my first read, I didn't really understand the magic of how Shenong works, and on my second reread, I tended to tap more sentences or dialogues where they will explain how exactly their magic works, so I understand it a bit more now. And how at first it's thought that both the Shenong Shi or the Shenong Tu and the person needs to drink the tea for them to have this connection, but in fact it doesn't have to be. The connection is strengthened based on how many past encounters you have had with the person, so on and so forth. I've completely forgot about the ending, but the ending made me immediately want to read the next book. And so yeah, that's where I'm currently at for this, and I guess I'll keep you updated once I read more of A Venom Dark and Sweet. I don't think I updated halfway through while reading A Venom Dark and Sweet, so I actually finished it already and I'm here to give my final thoughts and close out this video. As always, let's start with trigger warnings first. Trigger warnings for forced suicide, alcohol consumption, mentions of hanging, torture, violence, physical assault, and death. Since this is the second book, I can't really say much without going into spoilers, but overall I gave it 3.5 stars, which is so sad because I gave the first book 4.75 stars. The second book didn't really hit as hard for me, which is really sad. What I liked about the first book was that there was this yearning between the two main characters, and then there was also the competition element. So with the different trials, it was like that surprise element there. But the second book, it became more of like politics and people in court trying to gain the upper hand, and the two main leads were like mostly separated for at least half of the book. I guess I didn't really enjoy that as much. It felt like it was like too much of the mythology. So in the first book we had some mythology parts, but in the second book there was like so many different folk tales and traditions and things like that. And while I know that Chinese folklore and Chinese culture has so many different stories, this one felt a bit too much of trying to incorporate everything. So at times when they would talk about the stories of the past, of the mythology, of the folklore, I just kind of tuned out a little bit, but it makes sense as to why the author included it. So unfortunately, I don't think I'll be getting the second book physically. I'm even thinking whether or not I should keep my copy of A Magic Steeped in Poison, because the reread didn't turn out to be that good for me as well, mostly because the surprise of the competition element was already taken away from my first read. Okay, so let me just briefly talk about spoilers and then we will end out this video. The whole thing with the serpent was kind of like, okay, so that's fine. But towards the end, where we assumed the serpent was in Chancellor Zhou and turned out it was actually the father was kind of involved, I think, if I'm not wrong. Even after Kang plunged a sword into Chancellor Zhou, the god within, which is like the serpent, transferred over to his father. And so in the end, the father had to die and they had to gouge out his eye, his heart, so that the monster will be sealed off again. So that was the only exciting thing that happened for me, that I was kind of like, oh, so it wasn't actually supposed to be like this, it was supposed to be like this. I guess that's the redeeming part of this story. I guess that kind of like raised my rating for it a little bit. This book, they kind of like went on an adventure to find like the different parts of the things, which I'm like kind of okay with. It kind of reminded me like a road trip in contemporary books, which I don't really enjoy. That's the end for that book. And looking back and reflecting, I think out of all three books, I was most disappointed by Before Your Memory Fades. I only gave it 3 stars, and then I gave A Venom Dark and Sweet 3.5, and Love on the Brain, I gave it 4.5. So out of the 3 anticipated releases, I kind of really enjoyed only Love on the Brain. The other 2 are kind of like more on the disappointing end, which is really sad, but I guess this is what happens when you have too much expectations and anticipation for it, right? But I also cannot help but to be excited and anticipate it, because the few other books in front of the series were so good. So it's like, yeah, I'll probably do another video of reading anticipated releases next year at this point. I guess this was a fun experiment that mostly turned out in disappointments, but at least we still have a favorite for it. I guess that brings me to the end of this super long video. If you're still watching, please comment a brain emoji, because I enjoyed Love on the Brain the most. And I hope you're having a great day and a great week whenever or wherever you're watching this. Remember to stay hydrated. Like this video if you liked it. Consider subscribing to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. Yeah, I'll see you in my next video.